In our headlines on this Monday, March 17th, here in South Korea. The U.S. Energy Department places South Korea on the lowest tier of its sensitive countries list in January, just before the Biden administration left office, amid talk of nuclear arms development in South Korea and its brief imposition of martial law. Meanwhile, Trump's reciprocal tariffs on all American trade partners, including South Korea, will go into effect in early April as scheduled, regardless of the presence of free trade agreements, before his administration sits down for respective bilateral trade talks. On the national front, while the Constitutional Court has yet to decide on the president's fate, rival political parties vow to accept the court's verdict regardless of their respective stances and the deep divide among members of the Korean public who continue to take to the streets. The government here is hoping to better understand the U.S. Energy Department's decision to designate South Korea as a sensitive country shortly before the Biden administration left office in January. Kim Jong-sil has our top story.
South Korea, a key U.S. ally, has been added to the U.S. Energy Department's sensitive and other designated countries list, expanding it to 26 alongside North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran. The designation allows the U.S. to impose restrictions on science and technology cooperation. While South Korea is in the lowest tier as other designated countries, it remains the only U.S. ally with a formal defense treaty. Although current cooperation is assured, future research and technology sharing will face heightened scrutiny. The U.S. decision made in January follows South Korean President Yoon's controversial martial law declaration in December, which experts suggest may have influenced the move.
Due to South Korea's serious domestic political turmoil at the time, the U.S. placed it in the lowest category, other designated countries on the SCL.
The U.S. list cites concerns over national security, nuclear non-proliferation, and terrorism, leading some experts in Seoul to believe that growing discussions on South Korea's nuclear self-reliance may have also influenced the designation.
I think one of the main reasons is, political upheaval that has been going on in South Korea, but more importantly, acquiring own nuclear weapon capability.
The government was caught off guard with no prior notification. Acting President Choi Sang-mok led an emergency meeting on Monday, stressing the need for active communication with Washington to avoid disrupting cooperation. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy has been instructed to engage with its U.S. counterpart this week. Experts suggest that once South Korea resolves its domestic political turmoil, it could be removed from the list.
Once the Constitutional Court's decision on the impeachment is announced, the political turmoil in South Korea will be resolved. In that case, there would be no reason for the Trump administration to keep South Korea on this list.
Seoul is actively engaging with Washington to resolve the issue before the designation takes effect on April 15th. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And Trump's reciprocal tariffs on all American trade partners, including South Korea, will go into effect in early April as scheduled, regardless of the presence of free trade agreements, before his administration sits down for respective bilateral trade talks. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has details.
The United States is considering forging new trade agreements, which could also impact free trade agreement partners like South Korea. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in a CBS interview on Sunday local time, said that the U.S. could potentially engage in bilateral agreements with countries after resetting a new baseline of fairness and reciprocity. He emphasized that bilateral negotiations would not begin until reciprocal tariffs were fully implemented on countries like Canada, Mexico, and most of the EU, suggesting the tariffs could serve as a bargaining tool. He also stated that the reciprocal tariffs are not targeted towards specific nations but apply to all countries. South Korea's Trade Minister Choi Min-jeong, who visited Washington to request an exemption from the tariffs, said on his return that the reciprocal tariffs on South Korea are likely to take effect on April 2nd, as President Donald Trump previously announced.
The goal of reducing the trade deficit through reciprocal tariffs has not changed. Since President Trump directly oversees these tariffs, it's highly likely that his policies will be carried out as planned.
While there were no discussions on specific items like automobiles or beef, he said that the U.S. highlighted how South Korea's sanitary policies and technical regulations have made it difficult for the U.S. to access the Korean market. Chung's trip to the U.S. to meet with his counterpart follows Trump's accusation earlier this month that South Korea imposes tariffs 4 times higher than those of the U.S., a claim that Korea disputed. South Korea's effective tariff rate on U.S. imports stands at 0.79% as of 2024, in line with the two countries' FTA, a sharp drop from the 2.48% in 2015. While it is unclear whether South Korea's FTA with the United States will be revised or replaced by a completely new deal, given that it was already revised during Trump's first term, it is highly likely that further adjustments will be considered in response to the changing trade dynamics. 이수진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, to uphold or not to uphold the president's impeachment? Now, that is the question that the Constitutional Court is yet to answer, but one that members of the public have already answered and are sharing on the streets. Now, that being said, rival political parties have voiced their intentions to abide by the court's verdict, regardless of their respective stances. Oh Seong has the latest.
The mood is restless as the nation awaits the Constitutional Court's ruling on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment following his December 3rd martial law last year. With no indication of when the 8-member bench will issue its verdict, which was widely expected last Friday, the court's deliberation period has stretched beyond 2 weeks, longer than it took for the impeachment trials of former Presidents Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun. As the court typically announces the ruling schedule at least 2 days in advance, the earliest date would be later this week, most likely on Friday. In any case, it's highly probable that the bench will deliver the ruling before April 18th, when 2 justices retire. As Judgment Day draws closer, police estimate 44,000 protesters gathered in Gwanghwamun Square over the weekend, calling for Yoon's impeachment, while some 60,000 rallied against it, as public opinion remains deeply divided. To minimize the turmoil expected after the ruling, political leaders are being urged to send a clear message that they will accept the court's verdict no matter what. The ruling People Power Party leadership says Sunday they have already expressed their commitment to accepting the court's ruling multiple times and emphasized this remains the party's official stance.
Whether it is a joint press conference between ruling and opposition party leaders or a joint statement, we will issue a message of acceptance in some form.
Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung has also expressed his willingness to accept the ruling during a YouTube broadcast, while floor leader Park Chan-dae said respecting the court's decision is a given. Still, both sides of the political spectrum are stepping up pressure on the judicial bench. Over the weekend, some ruling party lawmakers continue to protest against impeachment, holding marathon demonstrations outside the Constitutional Court for the 6th straight day. Meanwhile, opposition lawmakers staged an 8.7-mile march from the National Assembly to Gwanghwamun Square, urging Yoon's removal.
As for the president, Yoon has been silent and has not issued public messages while the court deliberates on his fate. His lawyer has previously said that the president would accept the court's decision. A presidential official told local media on Sunday that Yoon remains at his residence and is calmly waiting for the verdict. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And the Seoul Central District Court has begun the trials of several military and police authorities on charges of insurrection amid the short-lived martial law declared by President Yoon Suk-yeol on December 3rd. Former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun was at the court earlier this afternoon amid allegations that he sought to keep lawmakers from entering the parliament to vote against the martial law. Former head of the Korea Defense Intelligence Command, No Sang-won, was also at the court here in Seoul. And later this week, suspended Commissioner of the National Police Agency, Cho Ji-ho, is scheduled to appear at court. In the latest bid to ink a truce between Ukraine and Russia, talks over the phone are reportedly poised to take place between the U.S. and Russian leaders this week. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said recent negotiations with Russia to end the war with Ukraine are going well. He also expressed confidence that Russian President Vladimir Putin will agree to a ceasefire. According to U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff on Sunday, the two leaders are expected to hold phone talks this week. Witkoff met Putin in person in Moscow last week to further discuss a potential ceasefire deal that will finally put a halt to over 3 years of war. The envoy expressed optimism over the phone call, saying that the presidents are going to have a really good and positive discussion this week. He also voiced confidence that a deal would be reached in the coming weeks. Witkoff explained that Washington is also in communication with Kyiv, adding that while the situation is complicated, the gap between the two sides is narrowing. U.S. negotiators are set to meet with counterparts from both Ukraine and Russia during the coming week to further engage in ceasefire talks. Meanwhile, the European Union is set to discuss measures to provide additional weapons to Ukraine worth over $43 billion during its foreign ministers' meeting and a leaders' summit. On Thursday, the military chiefs from countries participating in the Coalition of the Willing will meet in the UK to discuss post-war peacekeeping. While plans for deploying peacekeeping troops to key locations and training Ukrainian forces are being discussed, the process is expected to face several hurdles, as many countries are reluctant to send troops. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, the Palestinian militant group Hamas will release an American-Israeli hostage and the bodies of 4 other hostages if Israel abides by the ceasefire agreement. Now, this is according to the Associated Press, citing the words of a senior Hamas official who also called for talks on the second phase of the ceasefire deal to start on the day of this release and to last a maximum of 50 days. He further demanded Israel allow essential aid to flow into Gaza and to retreat from the Rafah crossing. Also in the Middle East, U.S. fighter jets targeted several Houthi drones launched from Yemen this past Sunday amid attacks on American Navy ships following U.S. bombings of Houthi militant sites in Yemen. Our Choi Min-jeong has the latest.
Powerful explosions occurred across many regions of Yemen, including its capital Sana'a, over the weekend. U.S. forces carried out more than 170 airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi rebels in the Middle Eastern country. The U.S. targeted military bases, specifically their missile and drone capabilities in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen. The operation was aimed at deterring attacks on international shipping routes in the Red Sea and to secure maritime navigation there. President Trump said the U.S. responded to Houthi attacks on American ships and aircraft in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Trump's national security advisor Michael Waltz told ABC News on Sunday that Iran should be held responsible for supporting the rebel group.
This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. And the difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and 2, holding Iran responsible. It is Iran that has repeatedly funded, resourced, trained, and helped the Houthis.
The Houthi-run health ministry reported that the strikes resulted in at least 53 deaths and injured over 100 people. In retaliation to the airstrikes, the self-styled Yemeni armed forces stated that they would target all American warships in the Red and Arabian Seas.
The Yemeni armed forces will not hesitate to target all American warships in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea in retaliation to the aggression against our country.
These forces carried out a military operation on Sunday local time with multiple ballistic missiles and drones launched at the American aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman and its battle group. However, the U.S. stated that 11 drones were shot down by U.S. aircraft while the missiles malfunctioned and fell into the sea. The United Nations expressed concern over the U.S. and Houthi clashes and urged for a halt to all military activities. Choi Min-jeong, Arirang News.
U.S. government-funded broadcaster Voice of America is shutting down after 83 years in service. The virtual shutdown follows an executive order from the Trump administration on Friday, directing the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which houses VOA, to operate with the legally required minimum staff. Accordingly, almost the entire staff of 1,300 people at VOA have reportedly been placed on paid leave. In sports news, speed skater Choi Min-jeong garnered gold in the women's 1,500-meter race at the 2025 World Championships. On Sunday in Beijing, Choi crossed the finish line first at 2 minutes 27.136 seconds. She now qualifies for the 2026 Winter Olympics. Meanwhile, also in the event, Korea's Kim Ki-lee won the bronze medal. And Olympic badminton champion An Se-young clinched yet another All-England Open title this past Sunday. Despite a leg injury in the first game, she made a remarkable rebound to claim victory in the 95-minute battle against China's Wang Ziyi. This marks her second All-England Open triumph following her 2023 win. An has dominated 2025 so far, securing 4 executive international titles and extending her winning streak to 20 matches. In science news, the story of taste, especially that of sweetness as well as bitterness, begin in the brain with intriguing power dynamics. Our Cha Yoon-kyung explains.
As fruit flies are often used as experimental models, researchers created genetically engineered fruit flies that are vitalized when their sensory neurons are activated. When their sensory neurons for sweet taste were activated, they suppressed the sensory neurons for bitter taste. On the other hand, when sensory neurons for bitter taste were activated, those for sweet taste were not suppressed. This is because sensory neurons for sweet taste can control those for bitter tastes.
When sensory neurons for sweet taste are activated, those for bitter tastes are suppressed due to the electric field from the sweet-activated sensory neurons. As a result, when there are bitter and sweet tastes at the same time, the bitter tastes are eliminated.
The researchers explained that this principle could be the reason why black coffee tastes bitter, while coffee mixtures with sugar taste less bitter or fruit juices taste less sour. As a mechanism of the suppression interaction among sensory neurons for taste has been uncovered from fruit fly experiments, researchers expect that this will help with experiments on sensory neurons of different species, including animals and eventually people. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the North Macedonian town of Kochani, a devastating fire engulfed a nightclub, resulting in the death of at least 59 people and injuries for more than 150 others. The fire broke out at the Pulse nightclub in Kochani at approximately 2:35 a.m. on Sunday local time during a concert by a local hip-hop duo. The fire was reportedly caused by pyrotechnic devices used during the performance, which set the club ceiling alight. Reports also say the venue was overcrowded, leading to a stampede as people tried to escape through limited exits. Emergency responders faced challenges due to the intensity of the fire and the club's overcrowded conditions. Authorities detained 15 individuals in connection with the incident amid allegations that the nightclub was operating without proper licensing and had exceeded its capacity. The North Macedonian government declared a 7-day period of national mourning following the tragedy. The United States has been experiencing a significant surge in egg prices, with the average cost reaching $5.90 per dozen in February. While the price hike is primarily due to a severe avian influenza outbreak, some consumers are attempting to source cheaper eggs from neighboring countries such as Mexico, where prices average under $2 per dozen. However, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has reported a 36% increase in egg smuggling incidents this fiscal year. Meanwhile, the U.S. has turned to several European countries, including Denmark, for egg imports to curb soaring prices. Disney's live-action movie Snow White premiered in Los Angeles on Saturday local time with a notably subdued event. The premiere featured limited media presence, with interviews conducted primarily by Disney-affiliated personnel. The film has been surrounded by controversies, including criticism over the casting of Rachel Zegler, a Latina actress, as Snow White, and debates regarding the portrayal of the Seven Dwarfs. Also, the differing political views between Zegler and co-star Gal Gadot as the evil queen have fueled further discussions. The film is scheduled for worldwide theatrical release on March 21st. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
The cold snap has made a return and it feels like winter again. This morning in Seoul, the temperature was minus 1.3 degrees Celsius and it stayed cold through the day with icy winds. Tomorrow will be just as cold as today with the daytime temperature reaching up to only 6 degrees. Snow will begin again late tonight in the Seoul metropolitan area in Chungcheongnam-do province, and heavy snow will fall across the country tomorrow. Looking at the expected snowfall, up to 10 centimeters of snow will fall in Seoul, and between 20 to 30 centimeters is expected around the eastern mountainous areas. Please be prepared in advance. Tomorrow morning will start off at minus 4 degrees in Chuncheon, Daejeon at 0 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 6 to 9 degrees all over the country. From Thursday, spring weather will come back with Seoul reaching up to 15 degrees. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us. Thank you for now.